everybody, what's up? KillJoy Jake here, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Sorry I've been gone, I've been working on my Scream fan film. We just started shooting and things are going good so far, so let's hope it stays that way. Fingers crossed, probably not, but that's okay. But I got a very, very late review on Fear Street. It's gonna be spoiler and non-spoiler. We're just gonna cram it all into one video this time. Screw it! I am very excited to talk about this though, but before I get into that, I'm gonna need y'all to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You can still help fund the Scream fan film. We have a long journey ahead of us, so make sure to check that out by clicking on the link in the description below. Alrighty, now let's get into it.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Well, I'm Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!
You son of a...
God, don't do that.
Well, sometimes that is better.
So my spoiler-free review of the new Fear Street movie, Part 1, 1994, I would say that you are going to love this movie if you're a huge fan of like Stranger Things and like early or late 90s slashers. For example, like Scream, Urban Legend. It's kind of like a mix of those two things put together. Actually, a better example of it is almost like saying the Duffer Brothers doing Scream. And what's funny about that is the director of this film, Lei TheNerd, is actually married to one of the Duffer Brothers. So you can tell that they have very similar styles. It's a lot more adult too than Stranger Things, which I think is interesting. It's much more like explicit and dirtier, and then like also has this like bumpin' 90s soundtrack on it. It's a lot of fun if you're into slasher movies. It's got a great soundtrack, great cast of characters, and you're gonna have a fun time watching it overall. Now I'm gonna just start talking spoilers and just really get into like a deeper dive into this. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe go check it out and then come back. Within the first minute of this movie, we get a dope Easter egg to one of R.L. Stine's weird novels. We meet an awesome character played by Stranger Things' Maya Hawke, and 9 Inch Nails is added to the soundtrack. Any movie that does that in the first 60 seconds, I instantly fall in love with, let me just tell you. It was really sad to see Maya Hawke die off like immediately, but like just in the few minutes that she's in this movie, she just like gives a great outstanding performance. Seriously, I'm a huge fan of her. Anything she does in the future, I will definitely check out. She was wonderful in the last season of Stranger Things, and I hope she returns for season 4. Now the main killer in 1994 is Skull Mask, but I think Skellyface is just such a better term to describe him. It sounds more like Ghostface. Skellyface is funnier to me, and also I came up with it, so of course that's why I like it more. I also loved Marco Beltrami's score for this. I mean, he's always fantastic. Like, look at Scream from 1996. Great score throughout. On top of the soundtrack being awesome and like the score for it being like really interesting and like it keeps that scary vibe and like spookiness throughout. This film does a really good job at basically just being a prototypical slasher. But then it also has like that fun, like quirky dialogue and zany characters that like Stranger Things has. You throw that into the mix, and then you have like this kind of like new and fun kind of slasher film that I'm a huge fan of. I loved what this film did tonally. I'm very excited to see what the next two films hold. Now there are some flaws in 1994, like for example, a lot of the songs on the soundtrack came out after 1994, which is like an easily avoidable mistake. I'm not complaining too much, but it's like, come on, you could have avoided that. Stranger Things does such a good job at like keeping its nostalgia in check, and what I mean by that is like specifically whatever year they're in, they're like talking about just the nostalgia from that year. They did such a good job with that. It's like, it just kind of sucks that this film couldn't do that as well. Also, something I came across on Twitter was someone pointed out that they used Calibri fonts, like when he's, the one character's like on the computer. That font didn't come out until like years after 1994 either, like another avoidable mistake in my opinion. Oh, and like this is just coming to mind, the biggest thing is that the two towns that they live in were established in 1666, but it takes place in Ohio, which didn't become a state until 1803, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I think this movie makes up for its inaccuracies with its zany characters and bloody kills. Oh, and I'm just gonna say this right now. It is so refreshing to have not come across some angry Karen online. I'm so glad like we can just like have an LGBTQ plus couple on screen, and like so far I haven't heard a word about it. And no one's upset, thank God. Like, okay, let's keep it that way for like future movies, please, Jesus. Oh, and speaking of that, the relationship between Dina and Sam is written really well. Like, I really believe like they had like some kind of relationship in the past, and like they were going through like a lot of problems. I would talk to somebody on Twitter about Dina's character being like a little too over the top, which like, yeah, I agree with, but I think that's just a side effect of like the attitude of this movie. It has like a very 90s like angsty attitude that I personally live for. I love that. That's why a lot of these characters had to be written that way. way. Another example of that is like there's a kid like running through the hallways of like their high school and he's dragging a fake dead body who's supposed to be Heather from the opening scene. And that's really insensitive, and like your characters are laughing at that. But it's like, yeah, that works with the time period really well. It's not exactly like if I saw that personally, I'd be like, dude, what the fuck? That's really offensive. Don't be doing that. This girl just died, bro. That's not cool. But it's like, it's early 90s high school kids. Yeah, they're not gonna give a shit about that, bro. They're going to be making fun of it, and it sucks that that's just how it was back then, but that's the truth. That's actually accurate more to the time period. All of the characters really shined too. I felt like, you know, sometimes you watch a slasher movie like this and like there's always like some characters that are like, okay, they just were like written in here to be bodies. But even the characters that died, like Kate and Simon were their names, like they even had like really big personalities that like you could relate to. Every character was written really well, had some like funny line of dialogue or something that actually like furthered the plot at one point or another. I like that. I like when a movie can do that, where all of its characters actually have a purpose and can be entertaining at the same time. I'm gonna real quickly read you a few things in my notes that I honestly can't remember why I put them in there, and I think they're pretty funny, so I'm just gonna tell them to you right now. Yes. Nightwing sounds like a rejected DC Comics hero. Okay, that's because that one like slasher killer is called Nightwing. So many pubes, oh my god. Skelly face, kinda thick though. I kinda wanna end this review by talking a little bit about Stranger Things actually. Like I know this is kinda, I'm making this whole review about Stranger Things, but something that I noticed in this movie that I feel like that they're trying to like test the waters with a little bit is like 90s nostalgia. Is that popular now that it's been like 30 years since 1991? Are we going to see Stranger Things delve into that realm? I know they kind of talked about like season 4 being like the last season because there's not much more 80s stuff they could do, but I know that in the writer's room they gotta be throwing around the idea of, well, can we do a season in the 90s where our main characters are in high school? I think the problem with that though, that at least they think is a problem, is like, is 90s nostalgia going to translate well in Stranger Things? I would say yes. I would say yeah, let's go for it. We have people who are adults that grew up in the 90s, feel like and actually look back at that stuff with nostalgia. Now this film was definitely testing those waters a little bit, but ultimately I think it kind of failed because it didn't get the year, like the specific year dates right. There was a lot of good music in 1994. There was a lot of like really culturally significant things specifically in that year. The point I'm trying to make though is that if they do a Stranger Things season, like for example in 1991, probably one of the biggest years for like pop culture of the 90s, then yeah, focus on what happened in 1991. For example, play Nirvana music throughout the whole thing, and don't be playing shit off of like their third album, which didn't come out until like 2 years later, because that would make no sense. Overall though, I really loved Fear Street Part 1. I had a great time watching it. I've seen it twice now actually, that's how much I liked it. And if you're a Scream fan, you are definitely going to like this, because it parodies a lot of the stuff from that original Scream film. So make sure to check it out if you haven't seen it already. I'm sorry I just spoiled the whole thing for you. What did you guys think about Fear Street 1994 though? Are you excited for the next 2 movies that come out over the course of the next 2 weeks? Leave me a comment about it down below. Thank you all so much for watching my review of Fear Street 1994. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Just look up KillJoy Jake and I'll come up. Check out my second channel, Movie Smoothie, where I'm reviewing everything that I like that isn't horror. You can check that out by clicking on my little channels tab here, and hopefully you subscribe. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon. The link for that will be in the description below. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.